Hello, and welcome to I Watched It With My Wife, the documentary edition. In this episode, we are going to be reviewing the first episode of the docuseries Q Into the Storm, which has been airing on HBO Max. This looks into the QAnon conspiracy and all that mess. So, Sarah, tell us about episode 1.
Okay. Oh God, there's a lot to unpack here. So first of all, this documentary starts in what, 2017-ish?
Yeah, 2017.
Yeah. And it talks about people who believe in this crazy QAnon conspiracy, and it has something to do with drinking baby's blood or something like that.
Yes, that the world is run by a group of devil worshippers who sacrifice babies and drink their blood.
Because, who could argue that? So anyway, we're watching. I made Jeremy watch this, and I'm so glad I did.
I wish you didn't.
Because his reactions. Let's talk about Jeremy's reactions. Jeremy's reaction to the first episode was absolutely hysterical. We got everybody in this documentary. We have the couple from Florida. We have the smart lady who thinks the world could actually be flat.
Yeah, she's the smartest one. Think about that.
She's well educated. We have what's his name? The guy in the wheelchair with the disability.
Is it Fred something?
I think so. I think it's Fred.
Yeah, he's the guy who started 8chan, which is
with a bone disease.
Yeah, he's the one that started 8chan, which is the website.
Yeah, go ahead.
Which is the website that Q posts on.
Yes. And then we have the people who run 8chan, and it's the dad and the son. And then you have lots of clips of Donald Trump, all kinds of weird, crazy things that just don't make sense being said. You've got the first episode kind of delves into what 8chan is, what QAnon is a little bit, and some of the beliefs of some of the followers and what made them believe the way that they have and how they got there. Even some of the ways, especially Florida Man, he's my favorite. He is my favorite person in this documentary so far.
Yeah, because Q is the truth. What you see on the news is fake. Oh my God.
Well, no, you have to say in a higher pitched voice. But
yeah,
Florida Man has a higher pitched voice.
He has a higher pitched voice, and it sounds like he spent his entire adult life smoking because it's a gravelly, high pitched voice.
Oh my God, I love this guy. So he's like, Donald Trump is gonna misspell something with a Q in it, and
oh dear Lord. Okay, this one, I don't know if it was him specifically or people reached out to Q asking Trump to misspell a word in one of his tweets with a Q in it, as a sign to them. Of course, I don't know how they could tell since, Donald Trump couldn't spell hamburgers, so that's beside the point. But then they got all excited because they saw the word acquisitions with a Q in it, apparently unaware that the word acquisitions has a Q in it. Oh my God.
So Jeremy had a meltdown about that. He had a meltdown about these people having access to firearms and all kinds of other things.
Well, yeah, no, they hate what I do for a living, and they have plenty of them have threatened to kill us in the past. So excuse me if I have a reason to be frightened of them.
Okay. That's a fair point. Jeremy does work in media. We all know media is, it's definitely the enemy. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, we're trying to tell you how to think.
Apparently. Well, no, you're just part of the cover-up, babe.
Oh, yeah.
You're just part of the cover-up. I know. I'm just kidding, guys. I don't believe that at all. But the thing to me that is so interesting about this, again, Florida Man, just because
Florida Man, who, by the way, is originally from Massachusetts, because he does drop those R's just like a New Englander.
You think?
Well, besides the fact he told us that he grew up in Massachusetts before
Did
moving to
he?
Florida. So
Oh God, poor
see,
Massachusetts.
see, you keep harping on Florida man. Most Florida men are not actually
Yeah,
originally
they're
from
all from
Florida.
somewhere else. So, oh God, but this guy, I love this guy. He's great. He's entertaining. But the thing that I love the most about this documentary is how it delves into um some of the psychology, like not in great detail, but some of the psychology and some of the backstories of the people who believe this and what got them to believe it. So, not so much that you think these guys are great people by any means. And when I say the term Florida man is great, I don't mean he's great. I mean he's entertaining.
Oh, he's hysterical.
That's what I mean. I'm
From an
not
entertainment standpoint, this is gold. All right,
this
this
is
is. I've not laughed this much since
this is the best documentary.
since probably the first season of Chappelle Show.
The only documentary that I think that is very close to this one is Tiger King, as far as greatness. But Jeremy hasn't seen Tiger King. Jeremy lived Tiger King.
I did not live Tiger King.
You live Tiger King. And just like how you know people in Tiger King, you know people in this documentary too, we find out. Jeremy has friends everywhere, guys. I'm not kidding. My husband is super famous.
I know.
Just kidding.
In one of the episodes, they reference a couple of candidates in Rhode Island, a couple of fringe candidates in the 2018 race there in Rhode Island. And they took some footage from the news station I worked at. And they actually popped up the reporter on there, even though he had nothing to do with the entire thing that they were just using him for. It's completely out of context. So I had to reach out to him. I'm like, dude, you're in this weird ass documentary.
I don't know how to explain what I like about this. It's like
Everything is
watching
batshit
Dance
crazy.
Moms. Yeah, it's kind of like watching Dance Moms. It's just
this is far better than Dance Moms. They should have locked up Abby Lee Miller for life long years ago.
No. This is kind of like that. It just doesn't make any sense.
True, but
even though you have the backstories and you don't know which one to root for because deep down there's so much going on, and it's just really interesting. So I have a theory on who Q is.
Yeah, you do.
I made that theory during the first episode, right? Was it the first?
I think it was the second episode.
Okay. So I'm pretty sure I'm sticking to it. And I think Q is more than one person. And should I wait to talk about that more?
Yeah, so let's wait till episode 2 where we'll discuss it. But anyway, because we're still focused on episode 1, which had all of the crazy people. The lady who worked for the Chicago Tribune who quit, she's like, I know the truth. And we're all being lied to. And all of these celebrities are child traffickers. And I'm like,
Earth is flat.
That's why and the earth is flat. And that is why I get fearful when people start talking about child trafficking on Facebook, because that is a legitimate problem. We need to tackle it. But so much of the stuff they share is such obvious bullshit. And you just listen to them and she's like, oh my God, if
like
you
the
would
Wayfair scandal.
Yes, like the Wayfair scandal. I was like, if you actually believe what you're sharing, you have just made it harder for people to catch legitimate child traffickers. Stop it. All right.
I agree, and I think
like the people like Oprah took people to Epstein's Island. No, she didn't. You are a moron.
But Trump was like friends with Epstein, but I don't want to get into that.
I mean, so was Bill Clinton.
Secretary. I mean, yeah, that doesn't.
Literally, we have somebody that was on that island who spotted Clinton.
I'm not. Again, that's not shocking. But I'm just saying, if you're going to say one, you got to call the other guy out too. And it's kind of what I'm doing. So
I'm all for calling all politicians pieces of shit because they are. All right.
Yeah, we're not. And again, like we can understand how somebody can be, or I can kind of see how somebody can be brainwashed to get to this point, because it's all things like, not everything they're saying is true. And, wake up and all this, and that's how like all of these
cults,
well, I was going to say conspiracies.
Yeah.
I was going to use the word conspiracies because I don't think it's necessarily a cult.
QAnon is a cult. The followers are cold. They're in a cult. There's no getting around.
They don't really worship. Well, I guess we have to. All right, so we're
going to worship somebody, but
so we'll have to debate that later.
Yeah.
We'll have to finish the documentary and decide.
Yep. This has been a crazy episode.
But
This is just the first episode.
it was a little bit all over the place. It was a little bit hard to follow. It started out in Japan and then came to the America and then ended in Japan. And you
No,
kind of go
Philippines.
the Philippines. Okay.
Yeah, it started in the Philippines,
And
came to
then you
U.S. and
kind of
went to the
get why,
Philippines.
because it's going to the
Because
people who created 8chan and basically,
and while it was created by two Americans, they both live in the Philippines because there's less jurisdiction over what they do there.
yes. And I again, I have my opinions on who I believe Q is, or the people that are saying that they're Q and what their associations are. And I do believe that somebody who is involved in this is close to Trump, and not
Probably, yeah.
necessarily, but maybe not necessarily in his favor.
That's true too, because a lot of this stuff, when you look at it closely, it's not necessarily pointing out good things about Trump. I mean, the followers think it is, but it's not. It's not necessarily pointing out anything bad about Trump either. It's just kind of pointing out things that are
It's
surrounding him in general.
yeah, and QAnon will post something and then Trump will post a meme an hour later that's similar, and it or Trump will post a meme and then QAnon will share the meme and or whatever. There was some of that in there, and there was something about a pen.
Oh yeah, something about a pen.
A pen in the Oval Office, and they posted it. So I have my beliefs on who it is, and I believe there is somebody close to Trump that is involved in this. Do I think that they're doing this to shed Trump in a good or bad light? I can't say that yet. I have not made that determination. I don't think like the security clearance and Q have anything to do with each other.
I don't think so either.
I think Q is just a fun letter to pick because it's an awkward letter.
I think
It's fun to write, but it's super awkward.
I think honestly, because QAnon and the Anon stands for anonymous, I think Q stands for question. Because when Q started, they put everything was a question. So that's kind of why I think that Q stands for question anonymously.
I mean, maybe that's possible. And again, I can see how someone would start to believe this because I don't trust everything that's always told to me. And I know like a big problem we have right now is disinformation and misinformation on the internet. That is a massive, massive problem. I mean, you got to think about it. The anti-vax movement, that has been exacerbated by mis and disinformation on the internet. And those sites are out there and they're like legally allowed to be out there. And you have memes spreading this propaganda, but not just anti-vax movement, like everything. Let's we could sit here all day and name different things where there are memes put out about that are incorrect. How many false COVID memes have we seen that give false information about COVID?
Almost all of them.
How many false memes have we seen about
If you get your news from a
racial
meme,
injustice?
you're an idiot.
Well, yeah, but that's the problem is so many people will not turn on the news. They'll get their news from Facebook. They'll get their information from Facebook. And then they'll hear the stories like, oh, mainstream media is lying to you. Well, of course it looks like they're lying to you when all your information is coming from a different side on social media rather than like the news media, which most news media channels can actually, and this is something super important that people can know, and Jeremy, please correct me if I'm wrong, but if they purposely put out false information knowingly, they can get sued. Am I incorrect on that?
Oh, absolutely, we can get sued.
So MSNBC, CNN, CBS,
Depends on their
ABC.
programming.
I think Fox is the only one that's allowed to know.
No, Fox can get sued
Fox News.
It all depends on the show you see it on, though, because if it's their
because
pundits,
I believe like Hannity or something like that.
Hannity,
because he's a commentator.
Because he's a commentator. Rachel Maddow can. The commentators can. If it's in the news section, cannot. Nothing in there can be knowingly presented as false.
Yes. So when you put on like CBS This Morning or the Today Show and you're watching your news from those, and those are just like the ones, or the evening news, like the evening news on CBS, NBC, ABC, whatever. What they're telling you is exactly what is. They cannot lie. They cannot purposely put out misinformation. They cannot purposely put out disinformation. If they don't have all the facts at that moment, they can only give you the facts that they have. So in the beginning of the pandemic, there were things that have changed throughout the pandemic. Why? Because we didn't have all the information right away, because this isn't information that you get all of overnight. It's science. Science takes time to figure out. It's not just like an automatic, thing. How many years did people think the earth was flat before we discovered it was round? Also, flat earthers, it's round. Just stop. I'm sorry, I had to throw that out there. But there's and there's so many times like news stories happen and we know what happened, but we don't necessarily know why right away. We can speculate why, but sometimes we don't find out why things happen till later. And that's caused a big distrust with the media. Also, there is a generational distrust with the news media because there are generations that are alive today that were brought up where the media did sugarcoat things, where they weren't completely honest, and also where you're afraid of communism because of bombings or whatever. Am I incorrect on that? I don't know. I didn't grow up in that time, but if anybody does want to elaborate on that, I would appreciate it. But there is like generational gaps with transparency in the media and what they believe. So there's a lot of this. How can a person go down this path is kind of what we're learning in the first episode. A little bit. Like we're kind of seeing how they've gotten radicalized.
Yeah, that's a big focus. It does show how they've become radicalized in their beliefs. And at the core of their beliefs is something that makes sense, but where they've gone out is something that doesn't. And as I said, there are plenty. If you saw our Facebook Live that Sarah shouldn't have taken, but she did, there are plenty of honest, hardworking Trump supporters that will, really believe he did a good job, that do not believe the crazy shit that you will hear from QAnon's supporters that should be pissed off that they're getting lumped in with these idiots.
Well, yeah, and there's also, and I mean, you can say that with any route and with any group of people. You have people who believe in eating organic and natural foods because it's good for you, but they still vaccinate their kids and their pets.
Because that's also good for you.
Well, yeah, because vaccines make you live. That's a whole other issue we'll get into another time. But yeah, but there's a whole lot of why. This is the first episode is more of the why. Why do people believe this? What got you into this? How did you get to the point where you're gonna fight for this?
First episode will make you laugh.
I thought it was funny.
It was hysterical.
I loved it. I thought it was great.
Episodes 2 and 3 not nearly as funny.
I laughed. You cried. It was great.
I did not cry.
You had like an existential crisis.
No.
You literally were questioning like, how do these people exist? How are they in this world? Why am I here?
I know how they exist.
Why am I here? Why am I watching this? What are you doing?
Well, yes, I was seeing why those last two are correct, but I wasn't having an existential crisis.
What is the matter with my wife?
I was having an aneurysm, but I wasn't having an existential crisis. But okay, but that pretty much covers the first episode of this docuseries. It's 6 episodes long. In our next episode, we will be talking about episode 2, which focuses on the creators of 8chan. And we'll see you next week. And if you're waiting for our rating, we'll do that after all 6 episodes are done and rate the whole thing.
Yeah, because it's hard to rate the documentary off the first episode, but if I had to rate it off the first episode, I'd give it a 10 out of 10.
That we'll wait till later. All right, we'll see you next time on I Watched It With My Wife.
Documentary edition.
Bye.